you're seeing that interest rates are rising. So you might be thinking that this is a terrible time to buy. But then you go out and look for a new apartment to rent and you see that the prices for rent have skyrocketed as well. So what should you do? I've been renting in Toronto, Mississauga, and Oakville for the past 8 years. My husband and I also just purchased our first home in Calgary, so we've done a lot of research on this topic. So let me share my learnings with you to hopefully help you make an informed decision for yourself. Before we dive into what's best for you, let's take a look at what it actually means to own a house. So for this exercise, I will be comparing apples to apples. Let's take a look at this condo building in downtown Toronto. I'd say it's a typical condo, not too old, not too luxurious. To rent a 1-bedroom unit in this building, you would have to pay around $2,650. But to buy a similar 1-bedroom unit in this building, you will pay $650,000. Let's say you plan on living there for 5 years. If you adjust the $2,650 to inflation over 5 years, you're looking at an average payment of $2,850 per month, plus utilities that might end up being around $3,000. Now let's plug these numbers into the mortgage rate calculator. I really like using this tool called ratehub.ca. So let's plug this in. If your price is $650,000 in Toronto, and then you can pick which down payment you're about to make. I always recommend 20% to avoid the default mortgage insurance payments. Then with your amortization period of 25 years, let's say on average you will be paying a 5% interest rate. If you're buying your first house, these will be the land transfer taxes that you have to pay here in Ontario. If we go with scenario 4, that you're making a 20% down payment on a condo unit, your down payment is about $130,000. Again, in land transfer tax, you will pay over 10 grand. You will have lawyer fees, title insurance, home inspection, appraisal fees. Including all of that, your payment is about $143,000. Now let's take a look at the monthly payments. If we go with scenario 4 of 20%, your mortgage payment is about $3,000. Just to compare with scenario 1, where you're putting down a little over 6%, that's $3,700. So let's go back to scenario 4. You will have property taxes. I think this is a pretty accurate estimation here. Utilities, property insurance, nobody has phone or cable anymore. Internet and condo fees. I think this is a pretty conservative number for condo fees. I've seen that in Toronto, some people are paying over $1,000 in condo fees. So conservatively, I would say your monthly expenses are about $4,259. Overall, just looking at this, you might assume that renting is definitely better. But is it that simple? Not really. There's a simple rule of thumb called the rule of 5%. If the price of your house is less than the annual rent divided by 0.05, then you should buy. Let's make this easy and plug these numbers into our example. So again, the price of the house is $650,000. If the rent is $2,650, if we multiply it by 12, we get $31,800 in annual rent. Divide that number by 5%, we get $636,000. In this case, the price of the house is higher than the calculation we got, so you're better off renting. But if you want to make a more accurate and well-informed decision, you might also want to consider opportunity costs. If you have $130,000 to make as a down payment, that also means that if you choose to rent, you will have that money to invest into the stock market. What if you could generate more wealth through the stock market than house appreciation? Let's take a look at that and plug this into the model. Let's say that you're purchasing this house with a 20% down payment, 5% interest rate, one-off costs, so those initial costs of 5%, annual appreciation from 5 to 6%, and annual costs of 0.5% of the cost of the house. If we look at this scenario, it looks like in 20 years you will be more wealthy if you bought this house. But if we go immediately over here into the renting section and we change our market returns from 4% to 6%, the graph quickly changes and shows you that you're better off renting. How will your property appreciate or depreciate, and when will you be able to make a lot of money on the stock market? Nobody can tell you that. You might think that Canada has an ambitious immigration policy and more people coming every year, so the demand for houses is increasing, but also we see more and more people struggle with the housing market. It really depends on what you believe will happen in the future. There are also certain psychological factors that you should consider. When you're buying a property and affording your mortgage, you can be certain that nobody will come and ask you to leave your place. place. You can also do whatever repairs and renovations you want. And some people really just prefer having a tangible physical asset instead of investing into the stock market. Managing your money in the stock market is definitely work, which can cause additional stress. On the other side, when you're renting, you're never worried about repairs or renovations because it is not your responsibility. You can also move around as you please, change neighborhoods, cities, or even switch countries. So you have to assess your risks and priorities. And lastly, those of you who are specifically interested in the differences between buying in Ontario and Alberta, I can walk you through some numbers that might give you an idea. Let's go back to the mortgage rate hub calculator, and you will notice some obvious differences. Let's continue working with the same example that we had. If we have Toronto set as our location, you will see that the initial amount of money that you need to close is $143,000 in scenario 4 when you're making a 20% down payment on a condo. But if we switch our location to Calgary, this number changes by about 10 grand because Calgary does not have land transfer tax. And of course, the biggest factor is that for $650,000 in Calgary, I can buy a 3 to 4 bedroom house, whereas in Toronto, I can only afford a 1-bedroom unit. Apart from buying a house, there are other costs to consider. For example, sales tax in Alberta is 5%, whereas in Ontario, it's 13%. Alberta also started their daycare subsidy. So no matter how much money you make, you won't be paying over $500 per month for your child to go to daycare, whereas in Ontario, most people are looking at fees between $1,000 to $2,000 per child. These are just some numbers to paint you a picture why Alberta is a more affordable option. But again, affordability is not the only factor to consider when you decide where to live. I hope this video helps you make a more informed decision on whether you should buy or rent. Please let me know in the comments which decision you come to or leaning more towards. I will link all the models and all the websites that I used in this video down below so that you can plug your own numbers in. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video.